Selz Kossen 1, God says, sit down now. What's about to hit your life is massive. What if the overwhelming feeling you've had all week wasn't anxiety at all, but your spirit sensing something enormous heading straight for your life? What if you were told right now to physically sit down? Not because something terrible is coming, but because what's about to arrive is too big to receive standing up, distracted, half present. I want you to actually pause for a moment before you keep scrolling. Take a breath, because this message wasn't placed in front of you by accident. Something has been building in your life behind the scenes, and it's finally close enough that you can almost feel the weight of it in the room with you. Sit down, because what's coming is massive. Are you ready to hear it? You've felt it, haven't you? That strange, restless energy underneath your normal days. Like something is shifting, even though nothing on the surface has visibly changed yet. You can't explain it to anyone without sounding dramatic, so you keep it to yourself. But it's there, a tension in your chest. A sense that you're standing right before something, without knowing what. At the same time, you've been exhausted from waiting. Tired of hoping for a breakthrough that keeps feeling just out of reach. Tired of asking when and getting silence in return. Have you been feeling that odd mix of anticipation and exhaustion, like your whole body knows something is coming before your mind has caught up? That mixture is exactly where we start today. Why the build-up feels heavier than the breakthrough itself. Here's something almost nobody explains about massive change. The waiting period right before it arrives is often the heaviest part of the entire process. Not because the breakthrough itself is painful, but because your body and spirit sense the shift coming before it's visible. And that anticipation creates a pressure that's hard to name. Think about the stillness right before a storm breaks. The air gets thick, the birds go quiet, everything feels charged even though nothing has happened yet. That's not a bad sign. That's the exact atmosphere that exists right before something significant. Have you noticed an unusual heaviness in the air of your life lately? Almost like you're standing in that thick, charged stillness. The signals you've been told to sit down for massive shifts don't usually arrive without warning signs first. Maybe you've had unexplainable dreams that felt more vivid than usual. Maybe conversations keep circling back to the same theme over and over, as if the universe is repeating itself to make sure you're paying attention. Maybe you've felt an inexplicable urge to prepare, cleaning out old spaces, letting go of things you've held onto for years, without fully knowing why. None of that is random. Those are the quiet signals that something significant is approaching, long before it actually lands. Have you noticed any of these signs showing up in your life recently, even if you brushed them off as coincidence? Why God prepares you before the moment arrives. Here's something worth understanding deeply. Massive blessings are rarely dropped onto someone without preparation first, because most people, in their unprepared state, wouldn't be able to hold what's coming. The waiting isn't punishment, it's construction. Something in you is being reinforced right now, so that when the moment actually lands, you don't collapse under the weight of it. You rise to meet it. Think of it like a foundation being poured before a massive structure is built on top of it. If the builder skipped that step, everything would come crashing down the moment the real weight arrived. What do you think has been quietly reinforced in you during this waiting season, without you even realizing it was happening? If this is landing somewhere real in you, this is exactly the kind of truth we explore deeply on this channel. Subscribe now, because part 2 goes even further into what massive actually means once it finally arrives. The danger of missing it because you weren't. Still, here's a warning worth taking seriously. Massive moments can be missed, not because they don't arrive, but because the person they were meant for was too distracted, too busy, too scattered to notice them landing. That's why the instruction is to sit down. Not to slow your life down for no reason, but because stillness is often the only posture capable of receiving something enormous without missing it entirely. Have you been so busy chasing smaller things that you might overlook the massive thing quietly approaching? Slow down enough to actually notice it when it arrives. Why your patience has been tested. So specifically think about the specific ways your patience has been tested recently. Maybe it's a relationship that hasn't resolved the way you hoped. Maybe it's a financial situation that stayed stubbornly stuck despite your best efforts. Maybe it's simply the exhaustion of praying for something and watching the calendar pages turn without an answer arriving. That specific kind of testing isn't arbitrary. It's often concentrated exactly in the areas where the massive shift is about to happen, because those are the exact muscles that need to be strong enough to carry what's coming. Which area of your life has felt the most stubbornly tested lately? And could that be exactly where the massive shift is about to land? The difference between a small blessing and a massive honor knot. Every good thing that happens is what we're talking about today. Small blessings arrive quietly, gently, without requiring much of you to receive them. Massive shifts are different. They require preparation. They require your full attention. And they often completely reorganize the direction of your life once they land. That's why the warning to sit down matters. This isn't a small nudge forward. This is the kind of moment that changes the entire trajectory you've been walking. Have you sensed that whatever is coming isn't just another small win, but something that will actually reshape the whole direction of your life? If you feel that distinction clearly, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because Part 2 walks through exactly how to recognize the moment it finally lands. Why you felt more emotional than usual lately. Have you noticed your emotions have felt closer to the surface recently? Tears coming faster than usual. Gratitude hitting harder in small moments. Even irritation flaring up more quickly than it normally would. That heightened emotional state isn't a malfunction. It's often what happens when your spirit is sensing something significant, even before your conscious mind understands what it's sensing. Your emotional sensitivity right now might not be a sign something is wrong. It might be a sign something big is finally close. Have your emotions felt unusually close to the surface in recent days or weeks? Sitting down means letting go of control. Here's the deepest layer of what sit down actually means. It's an invitation to stop trying to control exactly how and when this massive thing arrives. So much of your energy has probably gone into forcing outcomes, pushing situations forward, trying to manufacture the breakthrough through sheer effort. Sitting down means releasing that grip, trusting that what's coming doesn't need your management to arrive. It just needs your readiness to receive it. Can you let go of trying to control the timing and shape of what's coming and simply prepare yourself to receive it instead? You've felt the shift building for a while now, even if you couldn't fully name it. The restlessness, the heightened emotions, the strange sense of anticipation sitting right beneath your ordinary days. None of that was random. It was preparation for something massive that's finally close enough to feel. This is only part 1. Part 2 goes deeper into exactly what massive looks like once it lands, and how to make sure you're standing in the right posture to receive it fully. If this message reached something real in you tonight, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because part 2 continues exactly where this left off. Sit down. Stay ready. What's coming is bigger than you've let yourself imagine. Examined distinctions between massive and merely significant concepts. Examined distinctions between massive and merely significant concept. In part 1, we talked about the build-up, the restlessness, the heightened emotions, the strange stillness right before something enormous arrives. So today, let's answer the question that naturally follows. What does massive actually look like when it finally lands? Because most people expect it to arrive like fireworks, loud, obvious, impossible to miss. But what if massive doesn't always look the way you've been picturing it? What if you've already missed a few smaller versions of it, simply because you were looking for something bigger and louder than what actually showed up? Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. Here's something worth admitting honestly. You've probably been picturing this massive moment as one dramatic event, a job offer, a reunion, a single phone call that changes everything overnight. And because you're waiting for that one cinematic moment, you might be overlooking the quieter ways massive change actually enters a life. Massive doesn't always arrive as a single explosion. Sometimes it arrives as a series of quiet shifts that, only in hindsight, reveal themselves as the turning point you were waiting for the whole time. Have you been so focused on waiting for a dramatic moment that you might be missing the quieter signs that it's already beginning? Why massive often looks small at first. Think about the biggest shifts in history, in nature, in your own life even. They rarely start with something enormous. A single seed looks nothing like the tree it becomes. A single decision, made quietly on an ordinary day, can end up being the hinge an entire life turns on. Massive doesn't always announce itself with noise. Often it starts as something so small you could walk right past it if you're not paying attention. That's why the sitting down matters so much. Not because you need to brace for something loud, but because you need to be attentive enough to catch something quiet. Has something small and easy to dismiss shown up recently that might actually be the beginning of something enormous? The people. We almost missed their massive moment. Think about how many times, throughout history and in ordinary life, someone almost walked past the very thing that would change everything for them. A conversation they almost skipped, an opportunity they almost dismissed as unimportant, a person they almost didn't give a chance to. The massive moment was right there, disguised as something ordinary, and it nearly slipped by unnoticed. You don't want to be the person who looks back later and realizes the massive thing arrived quietly while you were busy waiting for it to arrive loudly. Is there something in your life right now that you've been dismissing as small that might actually be the beginning of what you've been waiting for? If this is shifting something in you, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 3 goes even deeper into how to recognize it clearly when it arrives. Why the massive thing often comes disguised as discomfort. Here's something that reframes everything. Massive breakthroughs are frequently preceded by, or even disguised as, discomfort. A door closing that you didn't want closed. A relationship ending that you thought you needed. A plan falling apart right before something better takes its place. In the moment, these things feel like loss. Looking back, they often reveal themselves as the exact clearing that had to happen for the massive thing to have room to exist. If you're currently in a season of unexpected discomfort, it's worth asking whether that discomfort might actually be clearing space, rather than simply causing pain. What discomfort have you experienced recently that might actually be preparing the ground for something massive to grow? The timing you can't rush, even though you want to. Here's a hard truth worth sitting with. Massive things operate on a timeline that doesn't move faster just because you're tired of waiting. You can't force a seed to grow overnight, simply because you're impatient for the fruit. Trying to rush timing usually just disrupts the process, forcing you to start certain parts over that would have completed naturally if you'd simply let them run their course. Patience here isn't passive. It's active trust, choosing to keep showing up, keep preparing, keep doing what's in front of you, even while the bigger thing is still developing somewhere you can't yet see. Are you trying to rush a timeline that actually just needs your patience instead of your force? Why? You've been given glimpses instead of the full picture. Have you noticed you've been getting small glimpses lately? A fleeting thought about a possibility, a brief moment of clarity about a direction, a passing feeling of excitement about something you can't fully explain yet. Those glimpses aren't teasers meant to frustrate you. They're previews, small enough for you to handle right now, of something too large to reveal all at once. If you were shown the entire massive picture immediately, it might overwhelm you before you were ready to actually hold it. The glimpses are mercy, not torment. What glimpse have you received recently that might be a small preview of the larger thing still coming? If this thought is settling into you, that's exactly why this series keeps unfolding. Subscribe now, because Part 3 dives even deeper into trusting the process while you wait. The role your faith plays while you wait is something worth being honest about. Waiting for something massive tests your faith in a very specific way. It's easy to believe in something the moment it arrives. It's much harder to believe in it while it's still invisible, while the evidence hasn't shown up yet, while all you have is a feeling and a hope. That specific kind of faith, believing before you can see, is exactly what's being built in you right now. And it's not wasted effort. It's the exact muscle that will let you actually enjoy the massive thing once it finally arrives, instead of anxiously waiting for it to disappear. How has this waiting season been strengthening a kind of faith you didn't have before? What to do while you're still waiting? The instruction to sit down doesn't mean doing nothing. It means preparing intentionally instead of anxiously. Use this time to release what you don't need to carry into the next chapter. Use it to strengthen the relationships and habits that will support you once things shift. Use it to heal whatever old wounds might otherwise sabotage the very blessing you're waiting for. Waiting well is its own kind of work, even though it doesn't look like the work you're used to doing. What can you actively prepare during this waiting season, instead of simply enduring it anxiously? Massive doesn't always look the way you pictured it. Sometimes it's quiet before it's loud. Sometimes it's disguised as discomfort before it reveals itself as breakthrough. Sometimes it arrives in glimpses long before it arrives in full. But all of that is still massive, still meaningful, still exactly what you've been waiting for, even if it doesn't match the picture in your head. If you stopped waiting for a dramatic explosion and started paying attention to the quiet signs already present, what might you notice that you've been missing? You've learned today that massive doesn't always arrive the way you expect it to. It's not always loud. It's not always sudden. Sometimes it's a seed, quietly planted, patiently growing beneath the surface of your ordinary days. Stay attentive. Stay prepared. What's coming is still exactly as massive as you've been told. You just might need to look a little closer to see it beginning. There's more ahead. Part 3 goes into what it actually feels like the moment this fully lands, and how to walk fully into it without fear. If this message is helping you see your season more clearly, subscribe now, because Part 3 continues exactly where this left off. Sit down. Stay ready. It's closer than you think. Resolved to deliver quality content without further discussion. Resolved to deliver quality content without further discussion. What if the closer you get to your breakthrough, the more likely it is to suddenly feel like it's slipping away? What if the delay isn't a sign you were wrong about all of this? It's actually proof you were right, and something doesn't want you to make it to the finish line. I need you to hear this clearly before we go any further. If you've been feeling like everything was lining up, and then suddenly it stalled, stretched out, or seemed to fall apart right when you thought you were closest, this message is for you specifically. Sit down again, because we need to talk about the delay. You felt it, didn't you? That unmistakable sense that you were close. The signs lined up. The timing felt right. And then, almost cruelly, something stalled. A conversation that should have happened didn't. A decision that should have been made got postponed. A door that seemed halfway open suddenly looked like it was closing again. And in that moment, doubt crept back in, louder than before. Maybe you misread the signs. Maybe you got your hopes up over nothing. Maybe massive was never actually coming for you at all. Have you felt that exact heartbreak? Getting so close to something, only to watch it seem to stall or disappear right at the edge. That specific kind of pain is what we're addressing today. Why the last stretch is always the hardest. Here's something almost nobody explains about breakthroughs. The final stretch before something massive arrives is almost always the hardest part of the entire journey. Not because the blessing is unstable, but because everything that could interfere with it, doubt, fatigue, distraction, old fear, tends to surface hardest right before the finish line, when you're the most exhausted and the least equipped to fight it off. Think about anyone who's ever run a long race. The final stretch isn't easier because the end is close. It's the most physically demanding part of the whole thing, even though logically it should feel like the easiest part to push through. Have you noticed that the closer you get to what you've been waiting for, the harder the resistance seems to become? The delay is often protection, not rejection. Here's a reframe that changes everything. Sometimes the delay you're experiencing right now isn't God taking something away from you. It's God protecting you from receiving it at the wrong moment, in the wrong condition, or through the wrong door. A delay caused by timing is completely different from a door closing forever, but in the moment they can feel identical, which is exactly why so many people give up right before the actual arrival. If the delay is protection rather than rejection, what might it be protecting you from receiving too early or too unprepared? Why the enemy of your breakthrough shows up ludest right before. It arrives. Here's something worth understanding honestly. Opposition, doubt, and discouragement tend to intensify the closer you get to something significant. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something right. Nothing fights harder than something that senses it's about to lose its grip on you completely. That's why the final stretch often feels the most chaotic. Unexpected setbacks, sudden waves of hopelessness, people around you suddenly questioning your direction. All of that tends to peak right before the breakthrough. Not because it's a sign to quit, but because it's a sign you're closer than you've ever been. Has the resistance in your life recently felt more intense than usual? right as you started sensing you were getting close to something big. If this is landing somewhere real in you, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because more of these messages are coming for exactly the moments you need them most. The specific kind of duped that shows up at the last second. There's a very particular kind of doubt that tends to arrive right before a breakthrough. Different from the general doubt you might have felt earlier in your waiting season. This one feels more personal, more targeted, almost custom-built to attack the exact thing you were most hopeful about. It whispers that you were foolish to believe, that you set yourself up for disappointment, that everyone around you secretly thinks you're delusional for hoping this hard. That kind of doubt isn't random. It's specifically designed to make you quit at the exact moment quitting would cost you the most. Have you experienced a specific, targeted kind of doubt recently that felt almost too precise to be a coincidence? Why God sometimes waits until the last possible moment. Here's something that might reframe the entire timeline you've been frustrated with. Sometimes the breakthrough is intentionally delayed until the very last possible moment, not to torture you, but to make absolutely certain that when it finally arrives, there's no question about where the credit belongs. If it came too early, too easily, you might quietly credit your own timing or effort. If it comes right at the edge, right when you'd almost given up, there's no mistaking where it actually came from. That kind of timing isn't cruelty, it's precision. If this final delay is actually precision timing rather than punishment, how does that change the way you're waiting through it right now? The danger of giving up too early. Here's a sobering truth worth sitting with. Some of the most painful stories are not stories of people who never got their breakthrough. They're stories of people who gave up minutes, days, or weeks before it would have arrived, simply because the final stretch felt unbearable and they didn't know how close they actually were. You don't want to become a story like that. Especially not now, when the signs suggest you're closer than you've ever been. Are you tempted to give up right now, in a season that might actually be the very edge of your breakthrough? How to keep going. When the finish line keeps moving, here's something practical worth holding on to. When the delay feels unbearable, focus less on when it's going to arrive, and more on who you're becoming while you wait. Keep doing the next right thing in front of you. Keep your integrity intact, even when nobody's rewarding it yet. Keep showing up for your own life, even during the stretch where nothing visible seems to be happening. The finish line isn't actually moving. It only feels that way because your exhaustion is distorting your sense of distance. What's one thing you can keep doing today, regardless of when the breakthrough finally lands? The final truth: the delay you're experiencing right now is not proof that you misunderstood the signs. It's often proof that you're standing exactly where the resistance is heaviest, which tends to be the closest point to the actual breakthrough. This is not the moment to quit. This is the moment to sit down, breathe, and keep believing a little longer. If everything that's felt discouraging lately was actually confirmation that you're closer than you've ever been, would you be willing to hold on just a little longer? You've learned something today that could save you from giving up at the exact wrong moment. That resistance often peaks right before breakthrough. That delay is sometimes protection rather than rejection. And that the final stretch is always the hardest part of any journey worth finishing. Stay seated. Stay ready. Don't let the loudest doubt convince you to quit in the very last stretch before everything shifts. You're closer than you think. Hold on. Weighed narrative timing against thematic momentum for continuation. weighed narrative timing against thematic momentum for continuation. Chosen 1. God says, sit down now. What's about to hit your life is massive. The first 24 hours after it lands. What if the way you respond in the first 24 hours after your breakthrough arrives determines whether you actually get to keep it? What if nobody ever warned you that receiving something massive requires just as much wisdom as waiting for it did? Stay with me here, because this is the part almost nobody talks about. Everyone focuses on the waiting, the hoping, the praying for the moment to finally come. But what happens the second it actually lands in your lap? What do you do with your hands shaking, your mind racing, and an entire new chapter suddenly staring back at you? Let's talk about exactly that. Here's something that catches so many people off guard. The moment the massive thing finally arrives, instead of pure joy, there's often a strange kind of panic underneath it. Your mind starts racing through 100 questions at once. What do I do now? Am I actually ready for this? What if I mess it up? What if this was a mistake and it gets taken back? That panic can quietly rob you of the joy you waited so long to feel, replacing celebration with anxiety in the exact moment you should finally be able to exhale. Have you ever gotten something you desperately wanted, only to feel oddly panicked instead of purely happy the moment it arrived? Why your nervous system doesn't know how to celebrate, yet if you've spent a long time in survival mode, waiting, hoping, bracing for disappointment, your nervous system has likely gotten very good at handling stress and much less practiced at handling sudden good news. That imbalance is why celebration can feel almost foreign in the first moments after a breakthrough. Your body simply hasn't had enough recent practice at processing something this good, this fast. That's not something wrong with you. It's just an old skill that needs to be relearned. The skill of simply receiving joy without needing to brace against it. Has celebrating good news ever felt strangely unfamiliar to you, almost like your body didn't know what to do with it? The first thing to do, stop and actually feel. There's the most important first step, and it's simpler than it sounds. Before you do anything else, before you plan, before you tell everyone, before you start strategizing your next move, stop and actually let yourself feel what's happening. Sit with the reality of it. Let your body catch up to what your mind already knows is true. So many people skip this step entirely, rushing straight into logistics, and they miss the actual moment of receiving the gift because they were too busy managing it. Have you given yourself permission to simply feel this moment fully before jumping into what comes next? If this is speaking to something real in you, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because there's more waiting for whenever your breakthrough actually lands. Why you should rush to tell everyone right away. Here's something worth considering carefully. In the excitement of the first 24 hours, there's often a strong urge to tell everyone immediately, to make the moment feel official by broadcasting it as widely as possible. But not everyone needs to know right away, and not everyone's reaction deserves to shape how you experience this moment. Take time first to protect this breakthrough in a private, sacred space before you expose it to outside opinions, reactions, or even well-meaning but distracting excitement from other people. Let it settle in you before you let it become something everyone else has a reaction to. Who genuinely needs to know about this right away? And who can wait until you've had time to fully absorb it yourself? Guarding against the voices that will try to minimize there's something to prepare for. Honestly, not everyone is going to respond to your breakthrough the way you hope. Some people, even people who love you, might minimize it, question it, or respond with lukewarm enthusiasm that quietly deflates your excitement. That reaction usually says more about their own unresolved feelings than it does about the actual size of what's happened for you. Don't let someone else's inability to celebrate with you shrink the moment down to fit their comfort level. Have you experienced someone minimizing a big moment for you before, and did you let it shrink your joy? If this resonates, that's exactly why this series was written. Subscribe now, because protecting your peace during breakthroughs matters just as much as receiving them in the first place. High gratitude should come before strategy. Once the initial shock settles, there's often a rush to immediately start strategizing, planning next steps, calculating logistics, thinking 3 moves ahead before you've even acknowledged the move that just happened. There's a time for strategy, but it shouldn't come before gratitude. Give yourself real space to be thankful first, fully, before your mind jumps into managing what's next. Gratitude grounds the moment in truth. Strategy without gratitude can quickly turn a miracle into just another task on your to-do list. Have you given yourself time to actually be grateful before rushing into planning your next move? The temptation to immediately prove you deserve, there's a subtle trap worth watching for in these first 24 hours. The urge to immediately start proving you deserve what just happened, working twice as hard right away, overcommitting, overextending, as if you need to earn retroactively what's already been given. That pressure usually comes from an old belief that good things require constant justification. You don't have to prove anything right now. You can simply receive this, rest in it, and let your future actions flow from gratitude instead of anxious proving. Are you tempted to immediately overextend yourself to justify receiving this, instead of simply resting in it first, protecting the moment from your own overthinking? Here's something worth naming honestly. Your mind, especially if you've waited a long time for this, might start looking for the catch almost immediately. Searching for what could go wrong, calculating worst-case scenarios, turning a moment of celebration into an exhausting mental audit before the day is even over. You don't have to indulge every anxious thought that shows up in these first hours. You're allowed to simply let this be good, without immediately searching for the hidden cost. Can you resist the urge to overthink this moment into something smaller and more complicated than it actually is? If that question matters to you right now, this is exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because there's more waiting for whenever your own breakthrough finally lands. The final truth for today: the first 24 hours after something massive arrives matter more than people realize. How you receive it. With gratitude instead of panic, with stillness instead of rushed strategy, with protection instead of premature exposure, shapes how fully you get to actually experience the gift you waited so long for. You've done the hard part already. You waited, you believed, you held on through the resistance. Now, simply let yourself receive it well. If you could relive the first moments of receiving something massive, would you choose stillness and gratitude over panic and rushed planning? You've learned something today that most people never think to prepare for. How to actually receive a breakthrough, not just endure the wait for one. Feeling it fully, protecting it from outside noise, choosing gratitude before strategy. All of that determines whether this moment becomes something you fully experienced or something you rushed past in anxious motion. There's more ahead in this journey. Stay close, because whatever comes next builds directly on everything we've uncovered so far. If this message is helping you prepare for what's coming, subscribe now, because the next part continues exactly where this left off. Sit still. Breathe deep. Receive this fully. You've more than earned it.